You know, when a military crisis kicks off in the Middle East, it can feel like it's a world away, right? Something you just see on the news. But what if I told you that the fallout from this conflict is directly connected to the price of your morning coffee, your summer vacation, and even the phone that's probably in your hand right now? Well, we're going to trace the ripple effects from a single blocked shipping lane to find out why it's shaking up the entire global economy.
So let's start with the question that's probably on everyone's mind. You head to the gas station, you go to the grocery store, maybe you try to book a flight, and the numbers, they just keep climbing. This isn't just some random inflation. Nope, this is the direct result of a very specific and very sudden shock to our global system.
And let's start with the most obvious pain point for all of us, the gas station. Right now, average gas prices in the U.S. have shot up to over $4 a gallon. That's the highest they've been since 2022. It is literally the first and most direct way a crisis like this hits us in our wallets.
But the real stress is showing up deep inside the energy market itself. I mean, check this out. In Europe, the price difference between a barrel of jet fuel and a barrel of diesel, it's skyrocketed to an unprecedented $48. A gap like that is a massive red flag. It's the market screaming that the entire supply chain for the fuels we depend on is under some extreme pressure.
And that pressure, well, it translates directly to your travel plans. Airlines are passing on those insane fuel costs, and that's leading to fare increases of up to 25% for long-haul international flights. So yeah, that dream vacation just got a whole lot more expensive. In all of this chaos, it all traces back to one single choke point.
The root cause here is a geopolitical crisis that has, for all intents and purposes, blocked one of the most critical arteries of the entire global economy. It's a single point of failure that our whole system, a system built for hyper-efficiency, has come to depend on.
And the speed at which this all happened is just breathtaking. It all kicked off on February 28th with airstrikes on Iran. Just a couple of days later, on March 2nd, Iran's Revolutionary Guard declared the Strait of Hormuz closed, just like that. Commercial shipping immediately ground to a halt, and oil prices, as you'd expect, shot through the roof. By March 23rd, tensions were so high that the U.S. administration had to announce a 5-day extension on a military deadline, citing some ongoing talks.
Now, to really get why this one spot matters so much, you gotta look at the numbers. 21%. That's more than a fifth of all the oil transported by sea on the entire planet, passing through this one narrow channel. Shutting it down is like clamping a major artery to the heart of the world's energy supply. It's that serious.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Experts don't mince words here. They call it, and I quote, the single most critical choke point in the global energy system. And it's not just oil either. About a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas, or LNG, also has to pass through here. So when this choke point closes, the ripple effects are immediate and they are widespread.
You see, a crisis like this really reveals just how interconnected our world is. This isn't just an energy crisis anymore, it's a full-blown supply chain crisis that triggers a domino effect, knocking over entire industries one by one.
The very first domino to fall is the chemical industry. I mean, so many of the products we use every single day, plastics, packaging, you name it, they're all made from byproducts of crude oil. So when that oil stops flowing, the basic building blocks of our modern world suddenly become scarce.
Let me give you an example. The price of something called naphtha. It's a petroleum byproduct that's a key ingredient for making plastics. It surged by 20% in a single week. Just think about that for a second. Suddenly, the raw material for everything from your water bottle to parts in your car is a fifth more expensive, almost overnight. But the chain reaction doesn't stop with plastics. Oh no, the next domino is farming. Now, you might not immediately connect an oil channel in the Middle East to the food on your table, but the link is direct and it is powerful. And it all comes down to fertilizer.
See, the production of nitrogen fertilizers, things like urea and ammonia, is incredibly energy-intensive. It relies heavily on natural gas. With Gulf exports of LNG and fertilizer components suddenly halted, global prices have spiked by 35%. So now, farmers all over the world are facing a massive increase in the cost of just growing our food.
And the dominoes just keep on falling. Next up, the high-tech electronics industry. You know, making the microchips in our phones and our computers requires some highly specialized materials, including specific industrial gases that are now, you guessed it, in short supply.
So here's a wild one. A huge portion of the world's helium, and yeah, helium is critical for cooling and manufacturing semiconductors. It comes from Qatar. With Qatar's exports cut off by the Hormuz closure, helium prices have soared by 50%. That's a big enough deal to actually threaten shutdowns at chip-making plants all around the world.
And of course, the automotive industry gets hit too. For them, it's really a perfect storm. They need the plastics, which are more expensive, they need the electronics, which are in short supply, and they rely on these massive, complex, global logistics to move parts and finish cars around.
Right now, as we speak, over 500,000 brand new vehicles are just stuck, stranded at Gulf ports like Jebel Ali in Dubai. The entire distribution network for the Middle East and South Asia has completely seized up, and that's halting deliveries and even stalling production lines way back in Asia and Europe.
Okay, so we've seen how this crisis is just cascading through all these major industries. Now let's bring it all back home. Let's connect these big industrial shocks directly to your wallet.
Economists have a name for this. They call it the multiplier effect. And it's not just some abstract theory. Economic models show us that for every 1% that fertilizer prices go up, the price of agricultural goods, like grain, goes up by about 0.2%. It's a direct financial pass-through from the factory to the farm and then to your plate.
And this right here is where it all compounds, where it all stacks up. That 35% fertilizer spike, that means more expensive grain. The higher fuel prices, that makes it costlier to transport everything. That 20% plastic spike, that means the packaging itself costs more. You see, every single step in the supply chain adds another layer of cost, right onto the final price you see on the shelf.
What this crisis has really done is expose a fundamental weakness in our globalized world. It's forcing us all to ask if the system we've so carefully built, a system optimized for maximum efficiency, can actually survive these kinds of shocks.
So what happens next? Well, analysts are basically looking at 3 potential paths forward. The best-case scenario is a rapid resolution, say within 6 months. That would let supply routes reopen and prices would start to fall. A more painful path is an extended disruption, maybe lasting up to 18 months. In that case, prices would eventually stabilize, but at a new, much higher baseline. But if this crisis drags on beyond that, we could be looking at a prolonged restructuring, where global trade patterns are fundamentally, maybe even permanently redrawn.
And that really brings us to the final crucial question this whole crisis forces us to confront. For decades, we built our entire global economic system on the idea of just-in-time efficiency. It was all about being lean and fast. But this event shows us the very steep price of that efficiency. So the big question is it time to rebuild for resilience? Even if it means things are a little less efficient and maybe a little more expensive all the time? That's the trillion-dollar question that we're all now facing.